So I guess about 10 years ago, I read a really interesting book for me, or I was given it. It was called Your Best Year Yet. And the whole concept of the book was about how if you take a bit of time to review your year and get intentional about what you want the next year, it's a very healthy process and one that helps you kind of manifest, achieve many of the things that you want in your life. So I started using this 10 years ago and have adapted it for my own use. And I find it so useful because in today's world, it's so easy to move from one thing to the next without stopping and pausing and reflecting. And so just before Christmas, I spend a day and I just sit down and think about the year that's gone. And then just between Christmas and New Year, I then get intentional about what I want from the year going forward. So that's kind of my process. I find it gives me energy, gives me focus, and it helps me reflect on some valuable learning. In the first part of my process, the kind of reflective piece, I just kind of get up and start. I don't look at emails or don't do any kind of tasky stuff before I start. Just make myself a nice kind of drink or nice breakfast and go into the reflection and making sure I find a nice creative space for that. So I usually light a fire and kind of sit by the fire and kind of get settled. And then I start off with just any kind of thoughts or reflections as I think back on the past year that just occur to me. So kind of more kind of general or big picture reflections. And I just note them down or record them. And then I spend a bit of time thinking, okay, what actually have manifested or have I achieved this year? And I start making a list. And, you know, as I'm speaking to you now, I'm looking, for example, on what I did last year, and it could be something. So, for example, I completed the buyout of a business. That was a goal. That I spent time with my family on a family holiday. That I maintained my fitness and doing yoga every day. So it can be very kind of general, some of them quite business focused, some of them very personal, family. And I literally make a list of everything that I feel that was achieved. And it's just, I think there's 82 things from last year I've got on my list as I look at it. And it's quite sobering because it helps you realize just how much has happened in that year. And it also helps you realize that you've been way more productive than you probably thought. So that's the first thing I do. The next thing that I normally do is just kind of, so what are my key learnings for the year? Interestingly, for this last 2 years, I've actually segmented that. So with my partner, Nikki, we did a little session on what have we learned through COVID times, because that's been quite interesting because the context has put different pressures on us. And yet there's been some very interesting learning. So for example, that I've noticed that, or we noticed, that doing things virtually has been much easier than we thought it would be. And in some ways, it's been easier to connect with family members that are further away. So in some ways, we've had more connection with family than if we did it face to face. So whatever the learning's been, that's what I did this last year and we'll do again this year. What are the kind of my key COVID learnings? But then it's kind of, I ask myself the question, what have I learned most this year? And that's kind of segmented up into some different parts. So how have I limited myself this year? And what can I learn from that? So for example, for me, last year, one of the ways that I limited myself was that sometimes I'd set a goal and work towards it and then get distracted and then not check in how I'm doing against it. So losing a bit of focus. So that was one of my limitations, but it could be a whole range of different things for you. I then kind of make a list of what are some of the things that disappointed me. So maybe there were things that I didn't achieve, or maybe some ways of being that I didn't really want or didn't like. So I'll make a list of those and kind of check in. So, you know, what have I learned from that this year? And then I also kind of think a little bit more broadly. So, you know, I think of my different roles in my life. So whether that's, you know, being a husband, a director, a coach, a community member, or whatever, and I think of those roles, and I think, okay, what are my kind of key insights and learnings and reflections of how I was in each of those roles. I then do a little bit of a strange thing that maybe, I'm not sure I recommend this, but I do two things. I write on Post-its all the things that have disappointed me and I'm not happy with. And then one after another, I burn them on the fire and let go of them. So I just put one on, it's like, I acknowledge it, say it out, and I burn it. And then the other thing that I do, and this links to the next section that we're going to look at, is when I've done all my goals, I write them on a list and attach them to a firework. So when New Year comes along, I launch them into the sky to give them a bit of a start for the year. So for me, it's important to kind of make the goal setting broad. Now, I know some people will say, well, you shouldn't have more than 3 goals or 7 goals or whatever. I don't necessarily agree with that. So I have quite a few goals, but it's interesting because at the end of each year, I also measure how much goal achievement there is. And it's surprising. I think my worst year was 70%, and my best has been 90%. So it just shows you the power of goal setting. And we know that goal setting theory is very accurately is the most motivating thing that motivates us humans. So setting goals is a good thing. So what I do is I segment it up into different areas and try and set 2 or 3 goals in each area. So I'm just going to suggest the areas that I look at. But I think it's good just to reflect yourself and think, what are the important areas for you? So I kind of start off with my health goals, my holiday goals, my finance goals. I have one around the kind of environment and sustainability. So for example, my goal for this year is take time in nature to try and eat and buy environmentally friendly and local as possible. I set some goals around my local community, around charities that I support, around my work, and under work I have kind of the overarching goals, but also work goals of working as part of the team, working as a director, and working part of international. So I have kind of the even segment work up into different areas. I then have my goals for family, hobbies, friends, learning. I'm an avid gardener, so I also have goals for what I want to do in terms of gardening. In my relationship with my wife and partner. So when I've done all those bits of goal setting, I ask myself just a couple more questions, and that is, I ask myself, how can I make work fit into the rest of my life effectively? So I kind of go, how can I do that? Because it's so easy in today's world is to get so sucked into work that you don't leave enough space for the rest of your life. So that's important to me. And then I also ask myself, what can I do to achieve my top 10 goals this year? So after I go through all my goals for all different segments, I highlight my top 10 if I had to just choose 10. And then I ask myself, okay, what do I need to do? So for example, last year I had review it regularly, maintain my energy and take responsibility for my health, focus on a few things each day, for example. So that's my process. You know, the important thing is to find one that works for you. I hope that it makes as big a difference to you as it does to me. And good luck.